Okay. Good morning. Hush. We're on session 12. Okay. His back ached by the time he had repaired the full circle. He straightened up, wondering how old he actually was. Was this early middle-aged pain, or was this time to start slaughtering virgins for the annual literal bloodbath before the 700 years of life caught up with him pain? Another reason to get his memory back. A little trickle of pride welled up in his heart unexpectedly as he surveyed his handiwork. All the necessary runes meticulously transcribed around the innermost circle, each the perfect size. The words he needed to say hovered on the tip of his tongue, burning the lips in front of it. He had memorized them carefully while he inscribed, knowing that he wouldn't be able to look at the notes while casting, and that making any mistake could be fatal. He checked the lock on the door one last time. The last thing he needed was to be disturbed. He took a deep breath, quieted his mind. A dozen questions unfurled themselves, and he swept them away. More popped up in their place. Again, he set them aside. He concentrated on the image of a flat gray sky, featureless and unending. He took another breath. He released the words. The 3 silver circles embedded on the floor flashed red, their surfaces reflecting flames from somewhere else. He could feel the heat radiating off of them, even from where he stood, well out of arm's reach of the outermost circle. Inside the inner circle, nothing changed at first. And then the air folded, as if someone took a paper sculpture, folded it completely flat, and then tugged on the ends to pop it back into three-dimensionality. It might have resembled the process of Estogath's appearance. Estogath. If that paper had been somehow folded down into an invisible point, and if that paper had been made of something that smelled of cat urine and burning tar. There was nothing inside the circle, and then, abruptly, out folded something. Something made mostly of teeth from first glance. Teeth and claws. The fingers ended after one knuckle, but the ends consisted of claws as long as the forearms. The hips and elbows jutted at unnatural angles and shifted back and forth restlessly. The mouth was a lipless horror extending all the way up and back to where the ears should have been, if there had been visible ears. Pointed teeth lined the entire way from one corner of the grin to the other, tightly interlocked like a bear trap. Estogath's lidless eyes roamed the room before locking onto his. They were ancient and all-seeing, containing an eternity of watching come to naught. For a moment they stood, measuring each other. I'm going to pause. Okay, I'm back. You call again, Estogath finally said. The trap teeth opened and the sound simply issued forth. It couldn't have been formed by that grotesque mockery of a mouth. He knew immediately that this had been a truly terrible idea. An idea on par, perhaps, with stripping naked, covering himself in honey, and politely requesting a bear to fight him. Preferably while drunk and declaiming insults about the bear's mother, who had probably been a perfectly charming lady of the Ursine persuasion. His brain continued to provide helpful commentary on the nature of fighting bears, and absolutely none on the carefully constructed questions that he had decided on before he started this completely insane course of action. I seem to be missing some memories, he finally said. There, a statement. Perhaps this was a game, one in which the first person to actually ask the other a question lost. The problem was, if he lost, the Estogath had all those shiny, sharp teeth. If Estogath lost, however, Gav appeared to have some very soft shoes, which would not be much protection at all if he had to resort to kicking things, and an ability to create fireballs as long as his supply of dried roses held out. But he had the circles. That was the point of the circles on the floor. People, or horrifying teeth monsters, had to stay inside the circles, as long as the circles remained unbroken, he thought, and it would take some effort to pry or melt those circles out of their surrounding stone. Estogath tilted its head to a degree that would have snapped a human neck. It was not a he. It wore no clothing, and as far as Gav could see, the skin between its legs lay perfectly smooth. If there were other characteristics by which to sex demons, Gav did not know them, and he decided that, should he ever sit down to tea with the knowledge demon, they could have a delightful discussion on personal pronouns. But those teeth were clearly not made out of enamel, and anything that could look at him with that level of hunger in its eyes would probably not object to being dehumanized. Or rather, it would object to being humanized in the first place. "You wish them back?" it asked. It didn't seem concerned, so apparently questions were allowed. "Perhaps," he said, "depending on the price." It shook its head as if it had heard of the gesture but never actually seen it performed. "I never renegotiate a bargain." For a moment he nearly protested. Asking for a price was the opening to a bargain, not a renegotiation. Then he suddenly understood. "You mean I already made a bargain with you over this?" Had the memory loss been a side effect? Or the price? For what had he bargained? "That is knowledge, and for that you would need to pay," pointed out the demon. "At what price?" he asked. "Knowledge is customary," said Estogath. "Blood will do." Knowledge was one thing he did not have to spare. "How much blood are we talking about?" It shrugged. The shrug rippled down its shoulders, past its elbows, and set the dangling claws clacking. "The more you offer, the more of an answer you will receive." Which made sense, but still did not establish an exchange rate. "How about we start with, say, a thimbleful, and then we can raise the stakes from there?" "We'll see if you like the answer." He did not like its smile as it said that. Before he could lose his nerve, he grabbed the small silver dagger that lay on the table. He had cleaned it earlier, once with alcohol and once running the blade through a flame. Now he used it to slice open his left palm. Then he tried hard not to throw up at the sight of his own blood. He squeezed what seemed a reasonable amount into a little dish without looking too hard at it. Oh, I missed a sentence. He was a dark wizard, damn it. Dark wizards did not faint when they saw blood. He squeezed what seemed a reasonable amount into a little dish without looking too hard at it. He couldn't help but feel like the demon was laughing at him. A toothy smile that extended halfway around the skull would give that impression. He slid the dish across the floor to the foot of the demon. Estogath picked up the little glass bowl and opened its mouth. A tongue, easily 2 feet long, forked at the end, snaked out between the teeth. It scooped up the bowl clean, tilting back to let the red run the length of the tongue. Then the tongue disappeared back behind the teeth, leaving not a drop visible. For that, I will tell you this. I have your memories, including your knowledge that blood crossing the circle would break the barrier. Gav couldn't breathe. No spell was cast upon him, just his lungs refusing to work. And then, to his horror, he discovered that the demon's smile could indeed widen. It shifted its weight and stepped one clawed foot out of the circle. Gav ran.